It's just incredible that vehicles with extremely limited production runs can have such a profound effect on the global automotive industry. Examples of these vehicles are the Plymouth Superbird, which captured the imagination of the world, and the dealer-optioned Chevy Camaros, which were designed to destroy drag tracks. These vehicles all had one main purpose: to create an era of speed in the late 1960s and early 1970s, which many considered to be the golden age of muscle cars. However, what if I told you that there was another vehicle equally special, only 57 of which were produced, that went on to become an absolute legend in the modern world of drag racing? I'm talking about the gear-slamming, tire-blazing 427-powered 1963 Z11 Impala. The 1963 Chevrolet Impala Z11 is a beastly vehicle with a big block that was designed to compete with other drag racing legends such as the Ford R-Code Galaxies and some of the most vicious Chrysler Hems of all time. To fully appreciate how fierce these Z11-equipped Impalas are, let's take a brief look at the history of the Z11 itself. The Chevy Impala was originally developed in 1958 as a family sedan with gorgeous lines and a distinct style. In addition, Chevrolet chose to use the Impala as the basis for their newly developed powerful V8, which at the time was the 280 horsepower 348 cubic in V8, the forerunner of the fourth-generation big block Chevy that we all know and love. When the 348 engine configurations arrived in 1958, they had between 250 and 280 horsepower between the turbo thrust and super turbo thrust versions. These were real powerhouses, but it should be noted that, despite their name, there was no turbo. These were naturally aspirated, with the primary difference being a dual two-barrel carburetor setup and a triple two-barrel carb setup. However, the power output, while excellent at the time, would not last long. Chevrolet realized that it needed to continuously pushing the limits of performance to remain competitive, so power levels were increased overall, peaking at 350 horsepower by 1961. These 348 Impalas could now run short 1424 miles at almost 100 miles per hour, which was an incredible feat for any production car in the early 1960s. The year 1961 arrived with a lot of new additions for the Impala. Beginning with the SS trim package, which is presently offered, this package mostly consisted of distinct trim with characteristic checkered flags all over the vehicle, but Chevrolet also debuted the renowned 409 engine, which was an improvement over its smaller brother, the 348. With the highest output versions of the 409 producing an absurd 425 horsepower, the 409 saw power increases over the 348, as you might expect. In 1961 and 1962, the National Hot Rod Association, NHRA, and NASCNR were operating in full force across the country as the structure started to take shape with new classes and rules formed to make racing that much more competitive and entertaining to watch. Manufacturers took advantage of this rivalry to start what may be best described as a kind of arms race, starting with Chevy's 409 in 1961. One Plymouth entered the race with their 413 Max Wedge in their Fury in 1962, as well as the 421 cubic-inch Pontiac Catalinas and 406 big block-powered Galaxies from Ford. Based on the competition, Chevrolet realized that the 409-powered Impala was a little underpowered and overweight when compared to some of their rivals, so they created a special order package with the single objective of producing the most horsepower, while also packing it into the lightest Impala to destroy racetracks across the country. This is a very similar route to what Ford took when developing the Thunderbolt, but Chevy chose to stick with the Impala and do whatever it took to make it competitive at all costs. As a result, in 1963 Chevy released the Drag Race Pack Package Z11 option for the Impala, and they didn't hold back on performance. First, They chose to push out that 409 cubic inch big block even further by turning it into a 427 cubic inch stroker motor and increasing the compression ratio to a monstrous 13:112 to 1. It also had a larger cam and better valve trimmer that fed the new big block, which allowed it to produce 430 horsepower at 6,000 RPM and an earth-moving 575 foot of torque. On paper, realistic estimates at the time had these motors pumping out well over 500 horsepower in actual real-world use. But while this new racing 427 fixed the power problem, it didn't solve the weight-saving one. Chevrolet, in other words, took a knife to the Impala and made the following changes. They removed the radio, reduced the heater's volume, adjusted the front sway bar, and even replaced certain steel body pieces with lighter aluminum ones, such as the bumpers and the hood. They were able to remove an incredible 300 pounds from the Impala by combining all of these weight-saving methods to produce a total curb weight of 3,400 pounds. They matched this extra power and weight reduction with a Borg-Warner T10 front and a 411 pi rear end that was connected to a set of 6.7 by 15 bias supply tires. All of that extra power and weight savings did come at a cost, though, because the Z11 code was a $1,240 option that raised the base price of a 1963 Impala from $27 to well over $4,000. This was the price you had to pay to compete at the highest level of racing, and compete it did. Legendary drag racers like Sock and Martin Hayden profited from the Z11 Impala, and Grumpy Jenkins drove the car for the next few years in various classes in the NA. Legendary NASCAR driver and car builder Smokey Yunick prepped multiple Impalas with the 427 motor in them, which dominated at tracks like Daytona in the 1963 race season. The Grumpy Jenkins and Dave Strigler-driven Z11 Impala produced some amazing results. In particular, the old reliable 4-car was a powerhouse on the track, outperforming Ron Sox in another Z11 to win the AFX class at the 1963 Indianapolis National. The car would go on to win 90% of its races between 1963 and 1964 and eventually set a record for the AFX class, clocking in at 11:04 at 125 in the 4-mile. The main issue here was GM's sudden shift from competition in 1963 with its corporate racing ban. It can be debated as to why this actually happened, but it's generally accepted that it was some kind of combination of increased scrutiny on the large GM umbrella and the entire racing apparatus. And with all the crazy numbers behind it in racing history, there were only 57 Z11 Impalas built in 1963. Partially due to the large price tag and their desire to keep the production low. The 1963 Z11 Impala is a reminder of a time that preceded the true era of muscle cars and drag racing. If you're wondering why Chevy made this car in the first place if they were just going to discontinue it, the answer is that the team responsible for the Z11 and the racing programs didn't even realize this was an issue or even a consideration. Instead, they started producing the 427 and Z1s themselves in the winter of 1962, so 57 of them were produced before this order, shocking the teams and dashed their hopes of carrying on with these high-horsepower hot rods for drag racing. Even though there were only a very small number of these cars produced at the time, the Z11 Impala rose to prominence as a poster car for young men who enjoy the thrill of drag racing. When it came to toe-to-toe, it was among the biggest and baddest drag cars available, and it performed incredibly well while doing so, leaving its mark on the automotive world. We appreciate you all tuning in to another installment of our Rare Cars documentary series. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Rare Cars Revival YouTube channel and hit the notification bell for more documentaries, like this one on the most fascinating cars in the world. Until next time, enthusiasts. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and share it with other enthusiasts.